and welcome to our first ever Deep Roots segment. I am so excited to introduce this to you. My intention for these segments is going to be going deeper into topics, maybe some controversy, which is definitely what we're going to hit on today, and in the future we will have some interviews with some pretty fascinating people. So even though this video is going to be a little bit more lengthy than my normal videos, I hope that you can stay with us till the end, even if you have to break it up. So I want to maybe also direct anybody who's here for the first time to at least the pausing video or maybe my intro video to just get a better idea of who I am and what the intention here is in this community. I also am going to utilize that pausing skill for what we're going to be breaking into today. I thought since this is our first Deep Roots segment, I would just give a little bit of a breakdown of the format that I like to use. So context to me is really important. It's really hard to have, even though this isn't a fluid back and forth conversation, I am hoping that you feel compelled to kind of be a part of a conversation in this. And what that means is I want us all to be understanding each other and understanding, you know, there's a lot of different perspectives. So I like to just start with some definitions and highlighting some things so that we all know where we're at. And that doesn't mean that it's the only way to look at it, but it's just the way that I'm going to be looking at it today with our video. The other thing I want to then also prompt you on is that we're going to be pausing a little bit throughout this. And at moments where tension might be building, or I just want to check in with you, or I'm going to have some challenges, that we're just going to go ahead and present them. At those times, what I'd really like you to do, if you're really engaged with this material, is pause. Your actual pause button, not the skills pause button, right? So I want you to pause your video and I want you to just take that information in. I want you to take that challenge in and really work with it. If you don't have time to do that, you're just listening to this on your way to somewhere, maybe come back to that or write down the questions that I'm asking so you can contemplate those further. That's a really big part of what we're trying to do here, is just build further self-awareness and self-empowerment. So that's another part of the formatting that you're gonna see in this. And then we're gonna end with some kind of conclusion in these segments. That might be further contemplation, that might be follow-up, and definitely how we can take the information that I've built on through the context and through the challenges and what you can then start to incorporate and integrate into your lives. So that's how we're going to end the video. So I like to be clear as much as I can. So before we go further, I want to introduce something called dialectical thinking. So this is going to be something that we're going to use a lot, and specifically kind of fits in with our topic today. Dialectical thinking is when we are able to view issues from multiple perspectives that are seemingly contradicting information, and we're able to come to the most reasonable outcome based on working with each of those perspectives. So without further ado, let's jump into our subject. So today's subject is cancel culture. And I'm really excited to talk about this because one of the things that I'm doing here is I have continuous ongoing conversations with a lot of different people. I have access to a lot of people being a therapist, and something that is interesting that comes up with cancel culture is our inability to really understand what's going on inside of ourselves when this topic or when we see or observe other people engaging or talking about this topic, when there are things in our media that are talking about this topic, that we're not really engaged with what's going on inside of ourselves. So that's really the key element here. I am gonna break down a little bit, again, give you some context of my definition, my understanding through my research through this topic, what I could find as far as a definition of cancel culture. So there's a lot of different variations, but there was a post out of the New York Times that did kind of broadly consolidate what seems to be happening here when we're talking about cancel culture specifically. So cancel culture is a collective attack on someone's status and reputation based on an opinion or action that is alleged to be disgraceful or disqualifying. Cancel culture has been compared to and really identified as call-out culture, boycotting, and some say mob mentality. So we're also going to define those things at this point so that, again, you guys understand that when I'm using this verbiage, where I'm coming from and the context that I have for that. So let's start then with the call-out culture in reference to the differences between call-out and cancellation. So call-out culture is when there is a business, corporation, possibly a politician, celebrity, or another person, usually again, that their status and reputation is being noted. But it's not necessarily on the line. They're saying, hey, person, you're doing this really inappropriate and harmful thing. You should really stop doing that. Or I'm not going to support this person until they show me that they're able to change what they're doing because what they're doing feels offensive. So that's really more of the call out. I wasn't able to really find like a call out culture definition because so much of it is intertwined with this idea of being culturally canceled. I do think that there are some distinctions there, right? First, cancellation had more of a public shaming aspect to it, a punishing aspect to it. If we're just looking at these definitions and how these things differ, call out does seem to have a accountability component or some room or ability for change. So I think that is an important distinction to make here in these two definitions. So then moving on to the next definition, let's focus on boycotting. Boycotting seems to be more about an individual participating or really refusing to participate in working with certain companies or purchasing from certain products, but it really does seem to be focused more around an individual and more corporate business or change. So for instance, I've decided not to support certain corporations. And that's my choice. I'm not asking anybody else in my life or anyone else around me to make those decisions with me. I have maybe publicly called out, hey, this corporation is doing this thing that seems really, really wrong. We should be really concerned about that. And is anybody prepared to, write letters or get someone involved to look into this or help investigate this, right? So again, that would be more of a call out of like, hey, we see what you're doing and we're not okay with it. What are you gonna do about that? Versus a cancellation would be collectively all of us coming together and be like, you don't exist anymore, right? You're done, shutting you down, no more operations, it's all over, we don't care. That's a little bit more like cancellation. So I think you're starting to see the different variables that are here, even though these things can have similar threads running through them. Our final comparison definition before we move into, where did all of this kind of transform and how have things progressed to the point where we're at right now, and then we're going to start to get into what's going on inside of us with it. So the last definition is mob mentality. Mob mentality is about, we're gonna grab our pitchforks and our fire and we're gonna go to this person in the village or outcast's house, and we're gonna run them out of town. We're outraged and we're not gonna take this. So we've seen this historically throughout time. When we don't understand something or we're feeling outraged and we have other people that we feel outraged with, we get together and we decide this person no longer belongs in either our social circle or any social circle. That really does have some resemblance. Where I think that it's different is where cancel culture specifically does have some roots in activism, versus mob mentality has really just been our human side of ourselves getting swept up in our emotions and being outraged over something, and then really trying to take things in our own hands at that moment and decide then and there what's about to happen. So that's really mob mentality versus cancel culture, which we're about to get into. Where is the roots of this? Where does this really come out of? Because it's not quite just mob mentality. Where did cancel culture actually come from? So this was interesting because in my research, it was a little bit hard to pin down, but what I did find is that there are some roots of origin in the 1960s Black empowerment movement. So I think it's really important for us to just take a moment and recognize that there is an empowerment in people who don't feel like they have a voice in the system and in culture, to be able to influence changes that can change the oppression, and when they're being disenfranchised, to be able to have some empowerment around that. And so I do think that there is some notes of, you know, this in our current version of cancel culture. I don't think that it's all bad. I don't think anything is all good or all bad, to be totally fair. And that's not really what I am doing this video about, is, you know, is it good? Is it bad? Get rid of it. Don't get rid of it. I just want us to take a moment right here, right now, to just check in, right? Just use that pause skill, because we're taking in a lot of information at this point. I might be challenging things that you believe in. I may be bringing up things that you didn't want to think about today. So just, where's your breathing? What are you noticing? Where are your thoughts going? Right? We'll just take a nice deep breath in together and release. So let's move on to the next reference point. So in 1991, there was a movie called New Jack City. And in this movie, Wesley Snipes' character has a line in it where he basically says that he is canceling someone. And I'll let you look up all of that stuff in the link below. But this was kind of first reference to being able to trace this relevant culture. So then in 2010, when people say that this showed up, now I'm not saying that they're crediting Lil Wayne for this, made reference to canceling someone like in New Jack City. So he was making reference to the movie and the line that was used in his song. Then from there was an instance on VH1 Love and Hip Hop where there were two people arguing, and in the argument, the woman said, "You're canceled." And this is really where things took off, where at the time, what they're referencing is Black Twitter really went crazy with this idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm rolling on the floor laughing, this is hilarious, I'm gonna cancel this, I'm gonna cancel my ex, I'm gonna cancel whatever. So it really was more of a joke or kind of play on words and something that took off. And that's really history of what I could find on cancel culture. Now, granted, I only read like 5 articles and tried to like piece things together, but it seems like it was the same kind of overlapping information in a lot of these things. So again, I'm open to knowing and learning if anybody knows more than me on this. But I do think that, again, this idea that this came from a cultural place, that the intention was not ruin people's lives or make people suffer. And if anything, it came from the roots of empowerment for the disenfranchised and cultural references in movies, a rap song, and a VH1 reality show, and then blew up on Twitter, right? So sounds pretty relevant to our times, right? These are how things kind of take off. We might have said, I want someone to blame, I want something to be outraged about, or I want to get to the bottom of this, I want to know what I'm supposed to feel about cancel culture, how to rebut that with people. Okay, well, one, you may not get those exact answers, but I hope that what you're about to get is much more valuable than any of that. Think about your favorite movie or your favorite story. If we just jump right into the middle, we have no context. I'm not talking about like a really awesome opening scene, right? That's thrilling. But if then we have the opening scene and we jump to the middle of the story and you don't know who these characters are and you don't know where they came from and you're not sure what's going on, then we're gonna be more confused. So that's why I really wanted to take the time to build all of that context and history. And I encourage you to continue to do your own research, and anybody that wants to share more information, please comment below. So we're gonna move on to our first challenge today. And what I want you to do is just check in. What are you noticing? How's your breathing? Right? Is it deep and slow? Is it fast? Is it shallow? Are you holding your breath at all? Do you have thoughts? Do you have feelings about what is being said? What do you make of that? Have you had flashes of your own experiences as we've even been talking about this? What are those experiences? Do you find yourself nodding in agreement, disagreement? Are you arguing with me? That's okay if you are. But noticing this for yourself, turn inwards in this moment. Even if it's not comfortable to be totally in your body, turn to your thoughts. What images are coming up? What feelings? So again, this is a place where I would ask you to, if you're really noticing something or you're in it, as I would say, you're in your feelings and thoughts and maybe a rigid or tense posture, right? I want you to actually hit the physical pause button and work with that. This is important information that your body and your mind is giving to you around what's happening here. Okay, so now that we've laid some groundwork, let's jump into what does all of this mean for you, the most important person watching this video. Because no matter where you land on the spectrum of cancel culture, we do not live in isolated chambers. We are intrinsically interconnected with everything in this world around us. When we consider where we're at and what's going on for us, the one thing that I find, there might be more than one thing, but the one thing I've noticed is the common thread, no matter where we are on the spectrum, is that there seems to be some kind of either real or perceived threat. My understanding in the work that I've done, the conversations I've had, and the research that I've looked up is that this threat is both internal, meaning it's coming from inside of us and our body and our nervous system saying, warning, and externally. So let me explain that a bit. My experience of observation through these conversations and research is that when we start to have experiences that come up to our conscious thinking and our conscious mind that indicate that there's some kind of threat of disconnection, and when we're feeling shame or intrinsic feelings of powerlessness, feeling devalued, and loss of control, right? So whether that is, it feels like it's happening to us, or maybe we've made the same mistake that this famous person is getting canceled for, and so we're like, well, I'm gonna get canceled. Or maybe we're on the side where, you know, our voice hasn't mattered, or we've been shut down from making a difference or being able to be empowered, and so we're watching someone else be disempowered and devalued, and that's causing us to feel disconnected and out of control. And there can be a lot of different variations of this, right? But I want you to really just sit in that for a moment, that there's something coming into our consciousness that is creating these feelings that the threat feels like disconnection through either experiencing or watching someone else experience shame, which is a very potent emotion, and feeling that powerlessness, devalue, and out of control feeling. When we're experiencing that, we're watching someone experience that, it's not comfortable. It's very unpleasant for almost all of us. So that's what I want you to consider here in this next challenge. So if you're not driving and it feels safe to close your eyes, I would invite you to close your eyes. If you don't, that's okay. Just pick a point on the floor or a wall to just kind of zone out while you're listening to me walk us through this challenge. Okay, so we're gonna do this a couple different ways, trying to hold those dialectics, seeing things from different perspectives. What I want you to do right now is imagine that you're someone in favor of cancellation. So some celebrity has done or said something, or some politician has done or said something, and you are completely outraged and you join the bandwagon of cancel culture. Okay, so whether this is you or not you, or you're undecided, ultimately I want you to just try and visualize that you are in favor of for this moment. I want you to notice what happens, again, what's going on in your body. Try not to go into a narrative right now, right? We're really quick to jump into these narratives. Notice if there's any images popping up, any words, any feelings, any tension in your body. Imagining yourself engaging with canceling someone. So now I want you to take a deep, cleansing breath in. And we're still gonna work with this challenge, but now we're gonna move to the other end of the spectrum. Okay, so again, Doesn't matter if this aligns with your personal beliefs. I'm asking you to kind of just imagine yourself right now as someone who truly is opposed to cancel culture. You don't get it. It's toxic. You can't believe that someone would contribute to canceling someone. And without going, again, trying to stay out of those narratives, if you find yourself in a narrative, just pull yourself back. What you're noticing. Images, words. Tension in your body. How's your breathing? Final part of this challenge, I want you to imagine a spectrum. We've been on the opposite, opposing ends of this spectrum so far. Going into what you have noticed, where there might have been tension, or where your breathing was getting disrupted, or where you felt totally fine. I want you to move a dial in your mind in between, just kind of slowly back and forth from a totally opposing cancel culture to totally in favor of it. And notice where you feel most okay. Maybe it's not good or bad, but just, hey, I don't feel that tension. My breathing seems fine. I'm all right here. And just notice where that dial really is on that spectrum. Notice what images and thoughts come along with where you're at on that spectrum, where you're at with your dial. I'm gonna venture to guess that probably the majority of you did not land on either extreme. Even if we're a little leaning towards in favor of or away from and towards, you know, opposing or away from, maybe you're smack dab right in the middle. But that's important. You know, you just became aware of something for yourself. In conclusion for today, we have done a lot of really great work. I hope that you took the time, and if you didn't have time now, I hope you come back to those moments so that you can work with noticing a little bit more deeply around this topic and what's actually coming up for you and what you're realizing for yourself. So what do we do with all of this information? We integrate it. You become aware of something, this is wonderful, and we just integrate it. I think that some of the, maybe less obvious takeaways from today's topic is, first and foremost, you are human. We got in touch with your humanity and recognizing what's actually going on in the moment for you around these things. But we're also engaging with other human beings who in a lot of ways are probably not so different from us, experiencing some of those same threats and misunderstandings or just downright confusion about what the heck is actually going on here. We're also deepening your understanding of dealing with our own emotions. So even if other people are doing things, it is 100% on us to first take responsibility for what's going on inside of us. When we are feeling threatened and we're experiencing certain emotions or certain images, or when we've gone into this narrative that may or may not actually align with what's going on around us, we really start to come from a reactive place. Instead, when we can deal with our emotions and we can notice that and settle that. And again, if it's just okay, then we can respond in a different, maybe even kinder way with one another. We will likely cover shame at some points. Shame is a really interesting feeling, and when we're experiencing shame on a collective level, it is actually influencing us, whether we're conscious of that or not. And so I think that's another big takeaway from today that was a little less obvious, is just how is that shame affecting us, and what can we do with it? Well, the first thing we can do is notice that we're experiencing it. And then also realize, are we identifying with, or are we reacting to a different narrative or something else completely when we hear and see these stories that continuously pop up in our culture? I don't think they're going anywhere very fast, hopefully one day, but right now I think these things are going to continue to be a pattern. And so learning how to navigate those things is really an important skill. And finally, I think that one of the big takeaways here, I hope, is how can we be better to each other? We covered in the definitions that cancel culture really is about more punishment based. Call out culture is more accountability based. So how can we hold, whether it's individual people, entities, systems, corporations, people need to be held accountable. If something is objectively wrong, then giving them a chance to correct that wrong, right that wrong, I think is fair, and holding the dialectics. There are just certain things that in 2021 there's no excuse for. And again, my channel isn't about debating the morals and the ethics of all of that. I'm gonna leave that up to somebody else. But taking away this notion that if you're working with what's going on inside of you, you're more prepared to sit down and have conversations with people that might have opposing views about the exact same topic, without us getting so automatically offended and shutting people down. Calling someone out and holding someone accountable also holds within us some hope that change is possible. That we believe that someone or something can actually change. Punishment and shame, if we're holding that, and that's really where we're coming from and what we believe to be the most effective, path forward, then what we're really holding in our heart is that we have no faith that people or entities can change. And I get it. Again, change is hard, and it doesn't seem like anybody's just doing it or doing the right thing just because, especially when it comes to corporations and where we're at with our institutions. And we can make it better. I believe that wholeheartedly. But it starts with us. We have to be willing to go within ourselves and understand truly what is happening within us, between us and the people around us, and then in the world around us. Thank you for making it to this point today. It's been a true honor to be able to be here with you. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the links to the articles that I researched down below so that you have that information as well if you want to go further into that. And I hope that you continue to work with us and bring this to other people by subscribing, liking, and sharing with anybody that you feel could benefit from this. All right, until next time.